Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't been here before, my name is Tracy and this is a DIY upcycling channel. We create fun, edgy clothes out of thrifted, pre-owned items together. And today what I want to do is take this ordinary white cotton women's shirt. It does have a few little ruffles on it, but I didn't pick it for that. It could have been plain. It didn't matter to me. That's just a little extra bonus. Might actually even get in my way. But I want to take this. I'm looking for a really fun white shirt to wear with any pair of jeans because I'm kind of low on something like that. I want to make it a romantic tuxedo style where it's kind of blunt and short in front and it kind of has tuxedo tails and lace on the arms, a few lace details and some other, vintagey fabric type details throughout. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is cut some of the sleeve off. Now these hit right at my wrist. They're not very long, but I am going to cut 4.5 inches off on both sides so that I can add some lace later on. Okay, I just lined up my sleeves and I'm going to measure 4.5 inches from the edge over, and that's right here. And I'm just going to cut these straight across. Now I'm at the bottom of my shirt. Now this kind of swoops up and curves to a shorter area on each side of the top. And that's right where I want to cut this. I want to crop this. I tried it on and that will hit right below my jeans waistline. So I'm just going to cut. Now, if you're more comfortable taking like a yardstick and lining up these 2 points and drawing a line before you cut, certainly do that. I'm just going to chop it off. Now I'm just going to do a simple thing to the collar. Sometimes I cut the collar completely off. Oftentimes I do that actually. I'm just going to line up these 2 points and I just want to curve this. And I'm just going to eyeball it. You don't have to have this perfect. I just want it more rounded. The next thing I want to do, so I thrifted this tablecloth. It's oval, it's pretty big, and it has sort of those inlay type designs. I see these on like duvet covers and things as well. This one happens to be a tablecloth. Now, half of it I want to save for the tails, and half of it, the other half, I'll be cutting on to add details to the top. So right now, I'm just going to lay it out and cut it in half. Okay, so now I just have this box of lace trims and things. I bought it as a lot from eBay, and I'm just going to be layering some pieces on the top. Now your top will be a little different than mine. I'll show you exactly what I do, but you do whatever you want. Now I'm going to decorate the collar, and it will be asymmetrical. It will be different on this side than it will be this side. So I'm just taking a little piece of tailor's chalk, and I am going to mark where I want one side to end, and it won't be right in the middle. It'll be off center about right here. Now this just kind of keeps me on track when I'm at my sewing machine. Sometimes you get buried in lace and you forget where you're supposed to stop. So there's my line right there. Now I'm going to take a lace ruffle like this. I won't have to do any pleating because it already is, which is really, really nice. And I am going to start right here on the collar, stick it in my machine. I won't do any pinning here. And I will, since this has a nice band right here to sew, I can just use a straight stitch. If I was sewing the lace, I'd use a zigzag. So I'll just start there. And I'm going to stay as close to the edge of the collar as I can. And I will stop at that red mark that I made, and then I'll just take my scissors and clip that off. I'm actually going to start at the red line and go forward because of just the way my sewing machine is set up. Now this one is all sewn on, and I am going to take an eyelet sort of ruffle, and I am just going to, the natural fold of this collar is where I'll end up stopping. I don't want to go below that. There's no reason to. So I am just going to take my eyelet one and start at the fold of that collar, and I am just going to go slightly above my other stitch line and get that sewn all the way around. Okay, so now I have that one sewn on, starting to get layery. Now I'll take you to the machine with me often, but not every single little time because we got a lot of little tidbits to sew onto this. Now I have a piece of lace like this, and I am just going to, again, with my straight stitch, go slightly above this last ruffle and go all the way around to that tailor's chalk line. Now I'm all done with the collar on this side. And now what I want to do is come to this side. And I am going to take a piece of lace. I think it's beautiful. It's 5.5 inches tall. And this one is not pleated. It's not a ruffle, so I'll have to pinch pleat it myself. I'll go right along the edge, just overlapping a tiny bit. Start right here, put my lace in, and then I'll just pinch pleat it about every inch. I'll do about a 1/4 inch pinch pleat. So, and just keep doing that all the way around until I get to where this ended, and I'm going to overlap it about an inch. Okay, I took my camera over to film the pleating, and I totally forgot to turn it on and film that, but that's what it looks like. Now, this is going to have raw edges and does not have to be perfect. This is a fun boho look, and there's not a whole lot you can do wrong here. You layer beautiful ruffles, and it's going to be beautiful. Now on this side, I'm not going to do 3 ruffles. I'm just going to do this big one, and then I have this little crochet piece, and I will just go just above this stitch line, and I will just do a little bit of pinch pleating. About every 1.5 inches, go about a 1/4 inch. Can't do too much more than that because I don't have a very big piece. Now on this one, I'm using my largest zigzag stitch. Now what I want to do is add one more piece of lace to the actual shirt, because I want even more lace that will sort of appear to be uniform with the collar, but it'll actually be sewn to the shirt. And I will have to take something to mark with. I use a tailor's chalk, and I'm going to mark where I want that sewn. I want it right underneath this lace about halfway, so it appears to be layered with everything else. But when I'm at my machine and everything's flipped up, I won't know where I'm supposed to sew unless I sort of mark it right now. Okay, so I'm marking underneath this lace, and I'm going to end it about right here so that it gets hidden, the end of that piece of lace gets hidden underneath this piece. So I'll stop it there. Okay, so now I have a super easy line to sew on when I go to my machine. I did all my thinking while I was standing here at the mannequin. Now what I'm going to use to sew on that line is a doily like this, and there's a hole in the center. I am just going to cut one side up to that hole, and then it stretches out like that. Now I'm going to sew this one just along that red line, but it will not be long enough. So I'll end it about there. And I am going to take another piece of lace, and this one was a circular doily, so I don't have to pinch pleat that. It has a natural wave because of that, but this was just a straight flat one. So I'll have to pinch pleat this a little bit when I continue here. And so about every inch, I'll pinch pleat about 1/4 inch until I get underneath of here. So basically, if it's a gappy piece of lace, I'm using my zigzag stitch. If it's pretty solid, I'm using a straight stitch. So right now, I'm using a zigzag and just following that red line all the way around. Okay, here's what that is looking like. Now, I have a piece of lace like this, and it is not pleated, so I'm going to have to pinch pleat it, and I want to do quite a bit here. I want this piece fairly roughly. Now, I want to sew that along this ruffle that already exists, but I want to start up under here so that it fills in this sort of gap. So I will just start under here, put it in my machine, go forward, back, and I will go probably every inch, but overlap it about 1/2 inch, because I want that to be a noticeable ruffle. And I'm going to go all the way down to the end of the shirt. Okay, remember the tablecloth that I cut in half? Well, I am going to cut a design out of that. Now I'm just pinning this onto the shirt on the opposite side of that ruffle we just did, and I have it at a slight angle, mainly because this part needs to go between those two buttons. Now that I have that all pinned, I'm going to go sew it on, staying close to the edges and using my zigzag stitch. Okay, so now I want to work on the sleeves, and I want to add, I cut 4.5 inches off. I want to add at least 5 inches to this sleeve. So I'm going back to that tablecloth, and I am going to cut the border off. It has, you know, this pretty cotton and this lacy detail. And I am just going to cut this at 5.25 inches. Just pretty much the whole bottom off of this. The reason I'm cutting 5.25 off, or using 5.25 when I cut 4.5 off, is because the sleeves were too short for me, and this is an ideal time to customize it exactly as I want it. Okay. So I know I have plenty of this. I have more than I'll need because I'm just doing very subtle pleating. I don't want a giant ruffle at the end of the sleeve. So what I'm going to do is go to the bottom seam of the sleeve. This is inside out. I like to start there because it's inconspicuous. There'll be some extra stitching where I start and stop. And I will take the ruffle and I will lay it right side down, overlap 1/2 inch, but I will not start at the end. I will start 1 inch or 1.5 inches in and leave a little flap there because we'll need that to sew this ruffle together at the end. And I will use a straight stitch. So say I start here 1 inch in, I'll sew a little bit, and about every 2 inches, I'll make about 1/4 inch pleat. I do not want this super roughly, but I can't sew it straight on or it'll pucker strangely. If you do subtle little pleating, then it will lay very nice. So I will just do that, keep sewing every couple inches, do a little pleat, go all the way around. And then when I get back to where I started, I'll show you what I do to finish it. Okay, so I've made it this far. This is where I started. Here's my flap. Now, I can't give you an exact measurement or formula. I just sort of eyeball this. I'm going to have to sew these together, yet have enough left over for a little pleat. So I think I'm going to cut my ruffle off at about here. Now I'm going to back stitch this because I need to take that out. Now I have that piece I just cut and the piece I started with. Now I am going to put these right sides together and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew these two ends together. So now I have that sewn together, but I still have a gap right here. So I need to slide the sleeve back into my machine and go back to where I stopped stitching and kind of go back over that forward and backwards so it's nice and durable. And I got enough room here for a couple little pleats, a little more than I needed, but that's okay. I'd rather have too much than not enough. And I'm just sewing that hole closed. And that is done. Okay, so here's the shape of the sleeves. How fun, right? Okay, so now we have this sort of raw edge because we sewed from underneath. And what I'm going to do is I got a lace ruffle out of my box that looks like this. And I'm just going to sew it onto that raw edge. I'll start at the underneath seam. And this has a nice solid piece right here, so I can use a straight stitch. And I will just go right over that stitch line and hide that raw edge. And I will not have to pleat this because it's already pleated. And when I get to where I started, I will just overlap it about 1.5 inches. I won't have to piece this one together. Won't that be cute? Okay, here's what the sleeves look like. Very cute. So now what I want to do is add, I would say I'd call it a feminine version of a tuxedo tail. And so I went back to that tablecloth and I cut a piece. It is 33.5 inches tall in the middle where it's the tallest, and it's 63 inches long. Now again, I'm going to take some tailor's chalk and I'm going to mark some lines to make this easy at my sewing machine. And what I'm going to do is, so there's a side seam on each side. I want to come in to the shirt 3 inches and 3 inches in from that side seam and 6 inches up. So I'm going to get a rough idea here so I'm not making all kinds of marks. So there's 3 inches in, 6 inches up. I'm going to make a little line right there. And then I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. Now, those are important markings. Now the rest, I want my tail, I'm going to show you on the back. I tried it on. I want it a little lower than mid-back. And so for me, that's 6 inches up from the bottom. So I am just going to go all the way around the shirt and make a mark 6 inches up from the bottom, starting at that first one that we made I will go all the way around to the other one that we made. Okay, so now I want to pin that tail onto this. In order to get it on accurately, I had to find the center of the back here, and all I did was measure between these seams. I got 20 inches and I stuck a pin at 10, and then I did the same to the tail fabric at the widest part at the top. I folded it in half and found the center and stuck a pin. Okay, so this is the bottom of my shirt. I have it right side out. And I am going to take my half circle and lay it on top of the shirt. I'm going to sew this right sides together. So, and I want it 6 inches up from the bottom. So I'm going to line up those pins because I know that will be the center. And I am going to pin that down on that red line that we made. Now I am going to go to that first mark. Let me make sure it's in the screen here. Yeah, the first mark that we made 3 inches outside that seam. And I'm going to take the very end of my half circle and I'm going to pin that there. And now I'm going to the opposite end, finding the end of my half circle, and pin that to the farthest mark on the opposite side. Okay, so now all I have to do is find the center. Now we have a pin here, find the center between those pins. That would be about right here. Now this is just a guesstimate. I never measure this kind of thing. This would be about the center between these pins, and I'm going to pin that right there. And now I am just going to get smaller and smaller. Now see between these pins, a lot smaller. Here's the center here, about the center here. And I am just going to keep pinning this like this until on that red line, until I have really small little gaps here and I'm comfortable sewing that. Now I have everything pinned. I'll take it to my machine, and of course I'll start at one end. I'm going to use my largest zigzag stitch, and I'm going to stay close to the edge and sew all that down. And when I go over these little humps there, I just make sure they're pushed one way or the other. Whatever way I choose, I make sure they're all going the same way. And I'll just get that sewn on. Okay, so here's what that's looking like. Now I have my iron warming up. I'm going to go give that seam a good press from the outside. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So cute. Now the next thing I'm going to do, so the actual shirt itself still has a raw edge down here, all the way underneath this, I'm calling it a tail, a tuxedo tail. And so I'm going to trim the entire piece in front. I'll start here, go all the way around underneath that tail, all the way back and end here. And I have a piece of lace here. It's 3.5 inches tall. Retail 99 cents, this whole roll. That tells you this is kind of old. That's kind of fun. Okay, and I'll probably just overlap it about 1/2 inch and use a zigzag stitch. Okay, I have the lace all sewn on. And the last thing I want to do is cut out, what I did was cut out another one of those inserts from the tablecloth. I'm just pinning it to the back and I'm going to sew it on just like I did the one in the front. All done. How cute is that? I know I say that all the time, but so unique, one of a kind. Now this would be really cute unbuttoned as sort of a jacket. It would be fun in the summer with a swimsuit. I got this fun hat at Goodwill. I don't usually find very cute hats at the thrift store. So when you wash this, it'll fray a little bit if you did it the way I did it. That will be cute. Just cut any extra long ones. I am going to slow it down, give you more of a close-up so you can see more of the details. Thank you so much for watching.